All right, let's start out with the Boston Celtics. They are 28-12 on the season, second seed in the East. Everything looks great if you just glance at the standings, but over the last month, they're 7-7. And ever since they've started integrating Kristaps Porzingis back into the lineup, their defense with him on the floor has really struggled. 112.5 defensive rating, a team worst of all rotation players. Doesn't seem like he's moving quite the same way he did pre-injury, but it's not just him. The point of attack defense is not the same from the guys you would expect it from. Is the defense bored? Is it tired? If they're bored, they're the defending champions. If they're tired, I mean, it's also indicated on offense, 25th over the last month with a 34% three-point percentage. The offense feels stagnant. They're falling into old bad habits. Maybe there's a me first, disease of more type of issue. Regardless, 7-7 in the last month, Tom. Is it time to panic about the Boston Celtics?
I'm going sweating here, KOC, and it's not like Patrick Ewing in a Game 7 sweating, but it's more like Boston Celtics are going to have to figure out a way to get positive minutes out of Kristaps Porzingis. It's really weird. If you look at the numbers this season, KOC, when he's on the floor, the Celtics have a negative net rating. It's negative 0.9 this season, meaning every 100 possessions that Kristaps Porzingis is on the floor with the Boston Celtics, they're actually getting outscored in those minutes per 100 possessions. Now, what is that from? You mentioned the defense and that the defensive rating has not been great when Kristaps Porzingis was moved back into the starting lineup. He's been in and out. When he is in the starting lineup, the Celtics are 5-5. And what's fascinating about it is that when he's on the floor, the Celtics have given up more threes than they've actually made, which is absurd. The Celtics are a team that are built to win the math game, that we are going to shoot more threes than you, we're going to make more threes than you, and you're not going to be able to survive the math problem. But the math problem is going the other way when Porzingis is on the floor. When he's on the floor, the Celtics have made 155 three-pointers, and the opponent has made 169, a minus 14 differential in the three-point column when Porzingis is on the floor. Now, you can look at that and just say bad luck. It's just random noise. It's something that will even out as the season goes on. But if you're asking the question, am I panicking about the Boston Celtics? The answer is no, I'm not hitting the panic button, but it is interesting to me that the Porzingis addition doesn't seem like much of that. Like they're better with Al Horford at the 5 this season. And the question for me is that like symptomatic of something within this team that they're just not right working Kristaps Porzingis back? They're 5-5 with him in the starting lineup with their big four. I don't know. This is a puzzling team right now. It could be a midseason funk that they're just hitting a little bit of a wall here. Jaylen Brown just hasn't been able to be a great three-point shooter recently. Really slid in that department.
Dribble again, Tom. I mean, he's back at just like he dribbles the ball in the middle of the floor, and that's when you're sounding the alarms as a Celtics fan when he's dribbling the ball in the middle of the floor right now.
That's right. And that's where you hit the panic button there, is that's not what they want to do offensively, right? But it just is, it's odd, isn't it? Like the idea was, all right, once they get KP back, they're going to be fine. It's going to, wait till you see that. But that starting lineup, their best starting lineup, last season it was 28-9, and this year it's 5-5. And something has to click better.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not sounding the alarms about the Celtics. I'm not even sweating. I'm still chilling with the Celtics. Okay. We've seen this play out before they won a championship. They're a team that this is the habits that they have. Sometimes when their backs are against the wall, that's when they perform at their best. They perform at their best when they're facing adversity. Udoka gets fired. They come out and have a big start to the season. They get challenged right now. Maybe we're about to see that happen again. Every December, it feels like this Celtics team goes through this lull. And I think that's just reflective of Tatum and Brown, the best players, who they are as leaders. And that's not to criticize them by any means. It is not. Performing, they're 28-12, and they're coming off of a championship, a long summer for a bunch of these guys, Derek White, Drew Holiday, and Jason Tatum going to play for Team USA in the Olympics and winning gold. And of course, Tatum didn't play much, but he's still part of those practices, still part of those teams. Now, I like I say, I'm chilling right now with Boston. I'm not overreacting, But there, of course, are some little things you see and you're like, like, could this be something? And I think the Porzingis stat you mentioned is really, really interesting. I did not realize that they had given up more made threes than they had made in his minutes as a starter. That's interesting.
I mean,
and I think
they have more threes like by a mile than their opponent, but that equation really tilts in the wrong direction when he's out there. And that might be a sense of hope, is that like 3-point variance. If you're looking at a silver lining, it's like that can't continue. The opponent shooting over 40% with Porzingis out there, and maybe the math just evens out in the end. And statistically, it's just a real quirk that will even itself out in the rest of the season.
I think it probably is a quirk. I mean, with Porzingis, like there's a play again. They lost to the Raptors on Wednesday night, and the Raptors are a terrible team. You shouldn't be losing to Toronto, even though it's in Toronto. And Porzingis, he has a play early in the fourth quarter. Scotty Barnes just kind of scoots around him. And it's like, really? Like Porzingis isn't offering enough resistance at the rim to alter that shot. And I think there's stuff out there where you're like, maybe he just doesn't have the same agility in those small spaces that he did at the beginning of last season, or even his year with the Wizards, where he was all-star caliber. And that's a real possibility, and that does limit what he could be for this Boston team if that's the case. But it's also tough to integrate a guy who's a 7-footer in the middle of the season. Like, that's a hard thing to do, so I'm willing to give that time and see how it plays out for him individually and for the team collectively as they play together. To me, and I've said this on the pod before, I'm just worried about the fact that for the full season, they're 15th in three-point percentage. Like, maybe there is a tired legs element for this team where they make a deep run, playing the way that they do, launching as many threes as they have this over the past couple of years. They're still number one in the NBA in attempts. Last year, they're number 2 in percentage. This year, they're in the middle of the pack. And so there's a huge difference in what your offense can be when taking three-pointers is the bedrock of this offensive system. And if you're average at doing it, that it's just not going to work at the same level, especially when over the past month, again, like they started off hotter. Over the past month, 7-7, they're 24th in three-point percentage. Is this a tired legs thing? Well, that would be concerning, but that's not going to play out until the season develops more often. Now, Drew Holiday's numbers are down from last year, down from what they were in Milwaukee. He's shooting closer to what he was earlier in his career with Philly and New Orleans. Derek White's shot has slipped as of late. You mentioned Jaylen Brown's dribbling. It just feels like a team that's not playing with the flow that we've seen, but that's largely rooted just in the simple fact that the results of their offense, with everything that they do, is just resulting in a lot more missing from the three-point line than it was prior.
Let me ask you this. What would it take for you to move into the sweating column? What would it take for you to perspire a little bit about the Boston Celtics?
Yeah, I think that it's simply this continuing into late January, early February. I just need to see them struggle a bit more. I feel like we've seen this story play out before. We've seen them have their backs against the wall. We've seen them respond. Even in the years that they fell short in the postseason, they've had these moments. And so I think for Boston, the next few weeks, they have Orlando on Friday night. Next Monday, they face the Warriors. They have their West Coast road trip. Warriors, Clippers, Lakers, Mavericks. Some tough games, some easier games coming up over the rest of this month. If they lose more games against like the Mavs without Luka, if they lose against, even the Warriors on Monday, as iffy as they've been, and we'll talk about them a little bit later, then the concern starts to build up. But we have seen a stretch the last 10 days. They've scored under 100 points 3 times. 3 times! It just doesn't happen. Like when it happened, when OKC held them under 100, it was like, oh my God, OKC held them on under 100. What an amazing fourth quarter defense. But then the Kings did it. And then the Raptors did it.
That's crazy. And when you think about this, it's all full squad. Like it's not like they've got no Tatum or Jalen or Derek White in these games. It's full squad. And that's concerning.
It is concerning, and I think that's where sometimes, like, you look at this Boston team, I'd like to see a bit more offensive variety. I think with the three-point shot is at an average level over this season compared to last year. Maybe a bit more KP post-ups, maybe KP, like he's still scoring. The The Celtics are scoring 1.3 points per Kristaps Porzingis post up, even better than last season. But as a team, they're only getting 5 or 6 a game. Maybe, up that 2 or 3 more post ups per game, maybe a little bit more, 2 big lineups, just some more variety maybe could help this team out midseason.
It's funny, when we started the season, it was all about Jason Tatum's revamped 3-point shot. We haven't heard much about that recently.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show, like, the first 3 games of a season, the same thing with Mikal Bridges, same thing with Russell Westbrook in Denver. Like, we like to think that the first 5 games of an NBA season is the whole story, but it is very merely like a half of a chapter of an 82-game schedule. So Jason Tatum's 3-point shot still not at like that top tier level yet.